Good morning, everyone. For those that don't know, my name is Stephen Kelly. I'm Chief Executive of Manufacturing Northern Ireland. You're welcome along this morning to our latest webinar to assist our manufacturing businesses in the middle of this public health emergency and what's looking like an economic emergency. As many of you have been on these calls before, please do keep your camera switched off and your audio on mute if appropriate. We will be taking questions and answers during the session, so if you click on the bottom, you'll see a Q&A function there, or a chat function there. My colleagues Conor Doherty and Mary Meehan will be taking those questions, getting you the answers as we go along, or if not, we're going to field those questions to our participants this morning. You're very welcome along. We will be taking a recording of the event, and the slides and recording will be shared with you hopefully tomorrow once we get that signed off. We've been living in quite extraordinary times, and because of certainly a lot of the health restrictions, many businesses have had to close down. Many businesses have had to change their production and operations to ensure that the latest public health and safety advice is being achieved. And as part of that, they've been trying to keep their businesses operating. And in the middle of all of that, we do have an opportunity, and that opportunity is in and around increasing our productivity and our productive use of our time. And this morning we have three speakers who will take us through their experience and some of the opportunities that exist in order to deal with these challenges. We will have a Q&A at the end. The speakers will have roughly 15 minutes or so each to speak, so that should leave some time towards the end of the webinar, which should last no more than an hour. I'd like to start off by introducing John McLaughlin, who will begin our seminar for us this morning. John.
Okay, thank you, Stephen, and I shall share my screen here. And yes, thank you very much, and welcome to the digital transformation in the manufacturing section. This morning, this is not going to be a high technology discussion. We're going to look at where is the benefit, and I'm sure many people joining today will have had problems with particularly trying to introduce new technology. So during my presentation, I'm going to try and demystify some of this and show some good worked examples as to the benefit and how this can really make a difference in manufacturing. My own experience, I've been in manufacturing for many, many years, initially as an engineer, working right through into senior management. I've been MD of a number of companies, and 5 years ago, I've gone out and helping, I don't like using the word consultancy, is mentoring and assisting the smaller businesses across Northern Ireland. And I must say, really enjoying getting involved, seeing the different sectors and seeing the strength of manufacturing. So what we're going to try and concentrate on here today is this idea of the order flow, order to cash. And, you know, in the current environment, we really have to look at conserving cash and trying to release that out of your business. So this morning, I'm going to concentrate on the operation side. That's where the strength is, and the system that we have and we've had written for ourselves is called ShopFloorLive. And then Rich is going to come in after my presentation and talk about the front end. And we're not going to get involved in website and all that side of it. We're really going to concentrate on taking the order from quotation into sales order and then into production. And in some cases we can link together. In some cases you'll see we can operate as independents. But how can we release cash in the business? And remember, this is not profit. This is money that has to be tied up. Could be come from a bank loan in order to fund the business. And up until recently, you know, cash was probably plentiful in many businesses. But now with the constraint and customers unfortunately going out of business or not being able to pay or pay on time, you have to really look at the cash and where is it in the business. And the simplest thing to start to look at is how do we take our lead time from weeks to days? Many companies are very comfortable in 4 weeks, 6 weeks lead time. But in reality, when their big customer asks for something urgently, it's turned around in 2 and 3 days. That's the sort of number you should be looking at as real lead time. Let's call it a week. How do we pull your work in progress down? And we'll see that as we go through some of the examples. Again, we're tying up cash. And this little example here, just to give you a feel for it, if you're selling £50,000 a week, 4 weeks lead time, valuing your work in progress at 80% of sales, there's 160,000, 150, 160,000 tied up in work in progress. Just imagine taking that down to 2 weeks and then into 1 week. There's £120,000 to be pushed back into the business. And that's the first thing. The second thing is, should a customer go onto credit hold and you're in 4 weeks, you've probably committed a lot of material. So what we're going to look at this morning is how can we reduce the lead times? How can we really take the waste out of the business and really give the customer no reason to not to pay you? So that's what we're going to look at. And we're going to continue this theme right through as order to cash. Got the order, when can I get paid for it? So what I mentioned earlier was I've had this system called ShopFloorLive built up over the last 2 years. We've only launched recently, but we're seeing it being very, very effective. And this is just a simple example. But if I'm standing at a CNC machine, my operation, this is my work schedule. And the way the system is, it's very much the red, amber, green. And you can see orders that are complete. This operator is not following, and you'll see in a moment or two, what we want is this idea of making sure you're working on today's production, not tomorrow's, not next week. Should something happen, you can suspend the job. This purple is showing a job suspended. That could be a credit hold, it could be a problem. So what our system does is provides this critical link from your order to the shop floor, provides a live schedule so everyone's working off the same hymn sheet. The nice thing about that is you're now reducing a lot of waste, running, looking, rejects. You know what you can work on. If it's available, by just clicking on the button, you can see it's ready to be worked on. The next operation can see it as soon as you've started to release parts. Very importantly, and I can't believe sometimes when I go into a small, medium manufacturer and ask where the schedule is. It's usually on a whiteboard, updated maybe once a day. Unfortunately, at the moment, you can commit a lot of time and effort into something that actually should be stopped, or it should be moved out in terms of dates. So as soon as the date is moved in the order, it instantaneously moves right across the shop floor. Last but no means least is trying to get this information now that you've got. How long did it take to do this? This material seems to be slower than that. You've now got that information captured, and you can use that against your Kaizen projects. You're trying to do improvement and get operators involved. You've now got real information. It's live information. You introduce a change, 24 hours, you can see exactly what that's doing. We'll touch on KPIs. I can't believe sometimes what we're measuring in terms of outputs and things like that, and really measuring the wrong items. And I do appreciate, I'm going to be going through this quite quickly this morning. I could spend at least an hour on this one section, but we'll go through it very quickly. Anybody has any questions afterwards, feel free to ask or contact directly. Here's a quick case study, and it's a real case study, and you'll see the dates and where we are on it. But a long established, back in the 60s, manufacturing company, roughly 30 people, real challenges on late deliveries to customers, excessive overtime, and margins being squeezed. And really at that stage, and we got talking to them, and actually Rich and I, in this particular case, had gone to talk to them, and we looked at what did they need. And we decided to divide and conquer. They needed the shop floor side, and then Rich will talk to them probably another 3 or 6 months to look at the sales order side. And that's the nice thing, the way we look at it, we can run completely independently or joined up. But here we are, struggling to find a system that worked for their business. And they had gone through and reviewed quite a number of the traditional ERP systems, but couldn't find the right fit. Got the system in. Within a couple of weeks, very quickly now, we can see real information. And along the top here is the ship date. When did they ship the product? And down the side, in this report, we can see the request date. So the customer's asking for something for the 4th. When did it ship? And we can see there's a typical order there, asked for the 4th, dragged on for nearly 2 weeks. So anything on this side of this 45-degree line was late. And this company was quoting 4 to 5 weeks lead time. So that's for the starting point. That's pretty typical once you start to look at this idea of, are you supplying complete and on time? So roll on, and this is only gone from November to February. Look at what's happened. We've now managed to tighten up. And there are some late items. And when I actually asked the question, because we'd already supplied quite a number of the parts to the customer, they actually delayed, but we didn't change the ship date on the system. We left the date, and that showed a lateness, but massive improvement, and we'll see the benefit of that in just a second. So that's a simple way of looking at how are we actually delivering. Before, and I'm using the typical lean bins, as we call it, the wastes, and this, and I'm sure manufacturing companies on this call can relate to a lot of these items. And I'm not going to go through in too much detail, but large batch, oh, that should make us efficient, but lots of work in progress, lots of money tied up on the shop floor. Poor workspace, because we hadn't enough space to hold all of this work. The schedule was missing. And believe it or not, and again, we see this a lot in manufacturing companies, different operations working on the wrong orders, but they're working to keep themselves busy. And we really need to get the sequencing right. Higher spec, quite often they were rushing stuff through in order to keep the customer happy, running higher spec material than they needed to, and therefore, again, was sucking some of the margin. Lots of damages because they were moving parts around the factory to try and create space. Building extra stock to increase the batch size because they were individually measuring the output. Doesn't matter that John makes 1,000 pieces per hour or he makes 10 of the right parts. And we'll see that coming through. And that's very, very important when we talk about this KPI. But all of this was resulting in late products, waste right through the system. And this is not the after, this is the journey they're on. And only after a couple of months, we've introduced single piece flow. That means we're moving from section to section, and the operators themselves now really see the benefit of that. They don't have to stack, and they can move through to the next operation. Improved communication, because they've now got a live schedule. They meet once, twice a day, and they know everybody is doing the right work and having it in the right place. And they manage that themselves. If it's on the schedule, that's what they're driving against. Once the operator has finished their work for today, they automatically move down line and look at the constraint. We have an issue in packing today. And quite often we'll find the guys at the beginning of the line are down helping the packing. And the reason that's happening is we're using pull rather than push. Everybody's working against the delivery date. They're pulling the parts through the line. And they're not starting parts early simply to get them out of the office. Using this type of scenario is when you have a defect in the line, it becomes quite quickly a slow mover. Why did that part not move yesterday? Why did that order get stuck? Because the pull system immediately identifies. The guys themselves said we're no longer building these extra inventory, what they used to call the just in case stock, because we can run stuff through quickly. And our KPI now is delivery date. Every one of the operators are focused in, did we meet today's delivery date? The guy said, all we're looking for is green on the screen. That's what they want. That's what they're driven. Do they make 1,000 pieces? If we're not being effective and productive, we're not putting enough into the schedule. There, again, it's quite a busy chart, but this company measured their output on a weekly basis, running at 250 square meters per week. And that apparently been on for 8 years. That's where production saw it. The owner really felt the business could do somewhere in the region of about 500 per week. Never achieved it, but certainly felt that everything was there to do it. As soon as we started to working with the company, and we'll see in a moment or two what we did, we very, very quickly, the guys themselves surprised everyone to see that's what they were able to do. Lead time was 4 to 5 weeks, lots of overtime. Went into Christmas, we cleared a lot of the backlog. They came up and said, no, we want to go to 2 weeks because we're now waiting on orders. Overtime was cut, and straight after Christmas got back. Quite interesting to pull this chart. COVID happened, they closed up, they restarted, and the operations guy said to me, from lights on the Monday morning, everybody knew what they had to do. And my goodness, they've really exceeded. Now, some of this was product mix. But they also found out one of their competitor in England is in trouble supplying some of the parts. They've stuck on an extra shift and they're now pulling in quite a lot of extra volume. And that's live data. They can see that every day, every job. And now that's what they look at. And I'm told they had a large breakfast that morning there on the Friday to celebrate. There's a quick summary, and I'm going to finish on the case study here. Before 4 to 5 weeks, 60% on time, 2 to 3 months down the road, 2 weeks output. Well, you can put a number on that. I'm not sure where it's going to top out. They now manage the overtime. They're talking about 2 or 3 hours a week if they have to do it. And the initial savings, they'd estimated about $350 a year. The system was part of it. More importantly is the 1, 2, 3. Look at your business process and make sure that people like myself understand your process. Lean is really pulling out waste. And I always emphasize this, do not automate the waste. So get the business process. What are we trying to do? Where is it moving through the factory? And how can systems support this cycle? And we all know it, a bad process will beat any system. Too many companies jump in here and say, no, our new system is going to fix everything. It will not, unless you're damn lucky. And from this case study, we found success, highly committed leadership team, very good support from the operational excellence team at Invest NI. And again, work closely with them because they have the expertise here and help to change the mindset and the culture. And of course, ShopFloorLive had a big role to play, being able to support the improvement. This is one of our own slides, but I like using it because what it really emphasizes, the oxygen into process change, into business change has to come from leadership. This is not an IT project. This is all about change in the business. And if there's leadership involvement, the right systems and processes, that changes the mindset of the business. And the more of these, the bigger the fire. And it's when we can help change that mindset and make sure the company's self-sufficient, we start to see the success. So that's a very quick case study. We're going to touch, and it's only right now to really look at where does this go to? What type of systems do we need? And the first question we really should be asking is, what business are you in? And that's very, very important. There's some fantastic systems that deal with distribution. I mean, it's unbelievable in some cases where we're working alongside companies there and orders live in the system in single digits of minutes from the order coming in an EDI until it's shipped within minutes. Over here in manufacturing, you're going to see much more difficult. And what works here doesn't necessarily work over here. And this is a simple question I would ask. If you're in distribution, are you making money? And this is what I get. Yeah, of course we are. We know what we're buying. We know what we're selling. We know the margin. We know it by customer. We know it by product. And that's brilliant for a system side of things because you can produce all the analysis. Ask the same question in manufacturing. And believe it or not, we may laugh at it, but we can all relate to it. We don't really know. Quite often we're waiting at the end of the month, the end of the quarter, or even the end of the year for the accountant to come back and break the good news or bad news to us. And that's crazy. And particularly in the current environment, we need to look at how to manage these things. Northern Ireland has really moved itself forward in the manufacturing section from, you know, a Me Too product really into very, very good high tech, starting to punch way above our weight. Bespoke production, made to order, short lead times, highly customized. That combination is great for the business. It's difficult when we start to talk about systems. And we'll see that in the next slide as to why it becomes a little difficult. But what the companies have done very, very well is they've succeeded in this by a few key people that know the business, know the customer, but you try to expand that. And very quickly, because of the poor processes and the lack of systems, the margin drops very, very quickly. And our intent here is always to work with companies to get the good process, the good systems, the good people to drive that margin back into the business. Most smaller companies hear this word ERP is going to be the savior. If I had an ERP system, it can tell me everything I need to know. I'll question that, and you'll see why in a moment or two. But ERP grew up, and for those that are old enough, will remember the old MRP into ERP, and ERP stands for the Enterprise Resource. And we're trying to plan everything in one place. And it worked when life was simple. Few products, pretty standard. And it does depend on the business you're in. If you're in manufacturing and highly customized, the architect hasn't decided what he wants and colors and everything else, and you've got 3 weeks, 3 months to make something, it's very hard to populate a system like this in a very short space of time, because any missing link, you'll end up in this scenario. And this is a sad fact, is many of these projects have failed, and it's not necessarily the system, it's what we're trying to do with it. And we must have, before a go live, everything aligned. And for those that have been in that difficult situation, the go live gets pushed back because engineering or someone hasn't done it. And it becomes a very high risk project. Now, thankfully, as we move towards Industry 4.0, we start to look at this thing called best in class. Best in class is how can we take particular packages, bolt them together through the Industry 4.0 and have them communicating. And I would often say to a company is, if you've got Sage or Xero or QuickBooks and it works and the accountant's happy with it, keep it, feed it with the right information. Start looking at, where is the business hurting? Is it in CRM? Is the pipeline not good enough? Then really look at that. Maybe it's the warehouse, maybe it's engineering, or it's the shop floor, was really where the ShopFloorLive comes in. But going this methodology is you de-risk the implementation. You implement at your pace and make sure it fits your business. And if it doesn't fit, the nice thing about it is unplug and find something that does. And let me tell you, all of these packages are going to change rapidly over the next couple of years, and you want to be prepared for that. JP is going to come in this morning and talk to us again about how we can add compliance across all of these different parts of the business. And again, very important, and again, a very costly methodology if you're doing that manually. And that's again where a nice overarching system. Rich will talk on the CRM and the stock management, and I'm going to finish off now just on the ShopFloorLive. What I always say is beware of the one system. That's a big risk. And of course, there's some great systems. If it fits your business, by all means, go for it. Small, medium manufacturer, highly complex, customized products, not knowing what the next contract is, you will struggle to try and push all that into one system. Your margin is in your waste. And the number of companies, and we always say that 80% of what we do is waste. It's only a matter of trying to find it. But some great programs, some great case studies in Northern Ireland where they've really worked on this waste and has given back the margin. We're not going to get higher prices. It's going to be more competitive. We're going to have shorter lead times. We need to really manage that, and now's the time to do it. Last but by no means least, it is not an IT project. This is the heartbeat of your business. It needs senior management all over it, not as a techie, but support, knocking down the barriers, making the changes, embracing the change, and making sure everyone communicates. So do remember, please, the 1, 2, 3, look at the process, look at the lean, get the waste out of it, and make sure whatever system you're putting in place fits that cycle. So Stephen, that's me. I'm going to pass over then to Rich.
John, thanks very much for that. A lot of wisdom in all that you've said there, quite clearly. And we've had some questions on already, which we'll pick up at the end. I think the two big things for me is that this isn't an IT project. And this morning isn't a technology IT seminar either. It's just showing how that can help facilitate what we need to do. And the second thing was about the margins in your waste. It's such a simple thing to say. And when you've said it, it's so logical that often it's probably so simple we don't see it ourselves. In order to assist with that, I'd like to hand over to Rich Dale, who's the CEO of Flowlens, who have a lot of experience in just looking at that whole waste area within a business. And Rich will take us through what Flowlens does and why it's relevant to today's conversation. Rich, over to you.
Thank you, Stephen. Thanks, John. Hello, everyone. So yes, I'm CEO of Flowlens, which is a cloud-based CRM and MRP solution that we mainly sell to small to medium-sized equipment manufacturers. Quite a few customers around the UK and Ireland. and a few further afield, US, Australia and whatnot. And really we focus, as Stephen says, on businesses that are ready to change and ready to bring systems in on top of good processes and not automate the waste, to John's point. There are a few things I just want to cover, a few risk factors, a couple of case studies again to sort of bring it to life, and also success factors, which will reinforce what John has been talking about. So firstly, a lot of businesses will recognize themselves in a sort of silo-based approach where information sits in one or more silos in the business, and it takes time to move that information along. It sometimes loses clarity, and we end up with multiple versions of the truth. What we're looking for in a business is to be able to create one place for that information, and that addresses key risks that are more important today than ever, but they're always there. Cash flow, you know, how quickly can you get an order into production? How quickly can you get that shipped and paid? Are you sitting on cash in work in progress or stock that you didn't need to order? And how do you know these things are happening in the first place? Information is not reliable. You can't get it quick enough. And these silos tend to operate to their own agenda. And as businesses grow, that can get worse. Where you've got a transparent approach to the business and the process, then you get more control because you can trust the information. I'll talk about that in a second. Finally, and today, unfortunately, we're looking at scenarios where we're coming back to pure head counts, less people, but we rely on the information in people's heads to move processes forward. They're the glue that makes things happen. And that's a risk factor at any time, and it's a constraint to growth. And many people come to us because that's the thing that they can see, even in good times, is holding them back. And I'll show you how. One customer, for example, here, this is Wayne Kramer and Sarah Kramer from GW Energy. They're about a 15-person business in Sheffield, and they make voltage optimizers. And they're typical of that silo scenario. They've been going for 20 years. They've got spreadsheets for everything, data manually keyed into Sage, and a standalone CRM that didn't really help push things along. Wayne and Sarah spent a lot of their time in the business, pushing orders through, chasing overdue deliveries from suppliers, and really just having to be on the process a lot. And I think they stood back at a point in time and realized, we're a successful business. Business is good, but we can't go on like this. They were the kind of key risks in the business as that glue. So they went on the journey. Before they contacted us, they had done what John recommends and what we recommend, is to actually map out the process, understand the business process, and then understand what it is that might work for that. They looked at a few options. They looked at ourselves, MRP Easy, Stata, and a few, but they settled on Flowlens because they could see that match between what they needed and what we were able to offer. And that's both in terms of the system, but also the kind of experience support that we provide to help people get over this hump. Because people aren't used to technology. The point of technology is it lets them get on with their jobs. So they're not supposed to be technology experts, but having that kind of peace of mind is a critical part of getting the habits formed and moving forward quickly. And in this case, 3 months was the timeline that they'd set because they had an upcoming ISO audit. And instead of spending 3 months getting all of their paperwork and their QMS into shape to have this audit, they could see that the system would allow them to handle that, present the evidence, and move the business forward. So they worked sort of back from their overall map of process and bottlenecks, and thought about their priorities so they could get orders on the system quickly and start purchasing and move through that sequence. Afterwards, and we're now about 2 years down the line, but if you check out our website, there was a case study video I did with the guys about a year ago, and even at that point, Wayne was able to say that he was getting 2 days back a week, and that has allowed them in the last 12 months to achieve the target of doubling turnover. It has got the information in the system drives the process, not the people. Orders flow quickly and effortlessly. And it also has the added benefit then of things like the ISO and that data, that information that they're getting out of it. So what are the ingredients of success then for this? Sorry, at one point, yeah, Wayne's quote, "I'm working on the business now instead of in it," which is an important, it's sort of the holy grail for any business owner. Now, a similar statistic to John, only worse here. We've got 90%, according to Bain, of digital transformation projects fail to deliver the expected benefits. So clearly, we want to be in the 10% that get it right. And I've been doing this for about 25 years. My career has always been in the cloud, and it's always been helping businesses to automate processes and remove the waste out of their day-to-day activities. And across that career, and more recently in the last sort of 10, 14 years with Flowlens, the key things that make this work are all to do with leadership. The leaders that decide that they are committed to changing are the leaders that ultimately succeed in any kind of digital transformation. And they get that buy-in because they're leading from the front. Without that, it's going to struggle, and people are going to lead by or take that example, and ultimately you might have some sort of implementation, but you'll not see the benefits. And then, as John said earlier, it's not the system's fault, but it's that cultural change hasn't happened. The next point, again, it's been well made already. You need to understand your process. You need to remove that waste and understand what your business needs before you go to the market and talk to somebody like me about a system, because then you know what you're looking for. You know what size and shape the hole is. So if it's a round peg, you're going to look for round pegs, and look for priorities. So it might be CRM or stock or service. It might be shop floor. It might be compliance. Where is your priority? And then don't be afraid to experiment. Those big bottlenecks create, as we saw there with the whip figures and Wayne's free time, there's low hanging fruit there that you can use to transform the business. And if it doesn't work, you're not committing tens of thousands of pounds. You're committing a few hundred or £1,000 in the time that you've already invested in your process to just get the right tool for the job. And then that change, that ethos becomes the norm, because we're always tackling waste, and we're always looking at how the business performs. And again, it's nothing to do with IT. It's just another tool, whether it's a lathe or a laptop or any other tool in the business to achieve that aim. Another critical factor where a lot of companies fail is they maybe put somebody junior on the business or on the project, or they don't appoint somebody at all, and it just loses focus. If the person who is running the project inside your business, if it's not hurting your business to have them distracted by this project, then you've picked the wrong person. Basically, you need somebody who has the knowledge and the authority, and that might be knowledge that they've brought from a different larger company in the past, but they've got that confidence to be able to deliver the project and bring people along with them. So another quick case study here, this is industrial switchgear. You've got Rob and David there, and they're based in Redditch outside Birmingham. Similar scenario, they were spending 25 grand a year on an admin person who was basically the glue on the day-to-day basis, who made things happen. Typical, week or month involved late or incomplete orders, which meant a lot of cost going out to site and retrofitting things. And then the team themselves, there's sort of core team of 4 or 5 guys and girls in the office who are driving the process. And but the process was, hey Rob, can you answer this question? David, what's going on here? As opposed to having somewhere to go and look. So that was just slowing them down. They felt they were letting customers down. And also from a cash flow point of view, it wasn't really till the end of the month. How much have we spent? Where are we with invoicing? Can we invoice that? That they didn't have the finger on the pulse. This was a slower journey, but the first thing they did was hire David, who's on the right there, who came in and saw from a background of other businesses that this demanded a holistic approach and somewhere to bring everyone together. And again, went out to the market having figured out what they needed and chose Flowlens, but over an 18-month period, a much slower pace. They worked first on the cash to get that core business process working, but then layered in other aspects of the system, including Xero integration. So they were able to move away from more expensive and sort of clunky Sage into seamless interaction with Xero. And that outcome, you know, the admin person is no longer required. Individually, they're saving a day per week per person. And Rob in particular, and again, you can watch a video of Rob on our website, talks about, you know, the time he has got back to help drive sales, both from existing customers and new business, wouldn't have happened if he hadn't changed his mindset. So he, you know, I love this quote that it has changed me, it has changed how I work. He was initially skeptical because David had come in and could see this, you know, the rest of the guys were too close to it, but that efficiency, you know, it has become the norm, and they challenge waste and they challenge inefficiency all the time now, and that's not just with Flowlens. So just in summary, you want to be in the 10%. Leaders need to commit to this. You know, get over the fear factor of technology by understanding the business process and the requirements, and being then able to understand and challenge potential suppliers and partners like us as to being the right one for the job. And finally, experiment, because you're not committing, you know, the farm to this project. You're not committing 100 grand for the next 10 years. You can experiment. And that's as a business and with individuals who embrace that notion of making their own job better and easier and more efficient. So short and sweet there. If you want to dig in a bit more detail into some of those success factors, which we've seen over hundreds of customers and implementations over my career, there's a blog that I've written for Stephen and Manufacturing NI on the Manufacturing NI website. So check it out, or we'll share it after the event as well. Thanks very much.
Rich, thanks very much. When we share the slides and the recording, we'll share that blog with everyone as well, because there's some really important learning. I love the bit that you said there, that we rely on the processes in people's heads. I think every business, every organization can relate to that one, and particularly at a time where sadly we're losing lots of people for economic reasons, more than anything else. That becomes even more critical. Dealing with that becomes even more critical. So I really appreciate that. We'll hand over now, just to keep things rolling, to JP from Obbi Systems. JP.
How you doing, folks? My name is JP McCorley. I'm the Chief Technical Officer of Obbi Solutions, and just firstly wanted to say thanks very much to Stephen and Rich and John and Connor and Mary. It's great to be part of this, and there's some fantastic insights. Today, I'm here to talk about digital transformation in the manufacturing industry and how that relates to our company and our platform, Obbi, and also more generally, when you're designing and putting together these types of projects, what should your considerations be? Okay, so the first thing we have is, I can get my, oops, it is it. Give me 1 second. Just 1 second, folks, sorry. Okay, so this is the first thing, apologies about that, folks. It's like, what is the problem we all face? You know, I have worked in manufacturing companies for most of my life, over 20 years, and have felt the pain of multiple disparate systems, as Rich and John have said, like paperwork, spreadsheets across every department, You have, you know, maybe 6, 7 different IT systems trying to do various things. People have set up things of their own accord, and trying to get visibility and information and oversight out of these systems can be a nightmare. What we found that the main issues arose from were basically we needed something that would glue the whole organization together, that would allow information to flow from top to bottom and would ensure that everybody has the information they need exactly when they need it. And again, as John had said, you know, my experience has historically suggests that you will never find one system to do that all. And it's important to get best in class and define exactly the problem you're solving. And the problem that we solve is around employee onboarding and induction and training, around checks and audits and tasks that have to be done throughout the business, and around accident and case management should anything go wrong, like near misses, etc., etc. And what we try to see is any information gaps present an opportunity. Anything that we say that I'm waiting on this information from this person presents an opportunity. Delays in information arriving presents an opportunity. And it's all about trying to present as much efficiency and removing manual labor work as possible. And that's what digital transformation should all be about. So what does a good project look like? Well, it looks simple. You know, it looks straightforward. It's easy to use by everybody in the organization. You do not need an IT degree to use the system. What you'll find is that a good choice in a system, you know, starts with engagement at all levels throughout the business. So what does that mean? That means those people that you would be fearful in your organization, you know, around being resistant, let's say, to new technology, and maybe they've been doing something for a period of time, 20, 30 years in the company, and very comfortable doing it. It's presenting to them a better way of doing things. It's presenting to them a way or a system that's in a digital form that will allow them to implement their own ideas and embed it throughout the whole organization, so that you have that continuity in the business, you know, so that information doesn't exist within certain people's heads or key roles throughout the business, and you can allow the information to flow from top to bottom and have that glue that holds everything else. So what do I mean specifically by that? You know, if we look at these types of, you know, systems in terms of digital transformation, you know, you'll often say, you know, well, why should I do digital transformation? You know, it's gonna cost me some money. It's gonna take me time to implement. You know, what isn't, you know, my systems aren't broke at the minute necessarily. We're doing okay. And as Rich had said, like, we're interested in doing business with people who want to do better. You know, we're interested in people who want to improve, and we're interested in partnering with people to help them achieve their growth potential and align with them in the future to provide for them in terms of their digital transformation needs, okay? And the type of impact that we're seeing is a reduction in staff turnover by 22% from implementing a system like Obbi. Employee induction time is reduced by 62%, and paperwork and admin across the board reduced by about 75%. And then on top of that, we're having complete visibility of all the activities within each department. Is somebody trained properly? You know, have they done their machine checks? You know, was the guard tour done of the factory last night? You know, if you're having, let's say, disciplinary meetings with somebody, let's say, for example, around performance or quality, you can see that they've carried out their quality training at various intervals and refreshers. You can see that if they, let's say, for example, injure themselves in a machine, that they have completed all their training and safety information. And it gives you the peace of mind to know that everything in the business that should be done is being done across all departments. So if we look at a case study, you know, we have, like, one of our customers, Decora Blinds in Lisburn. They're the biggest window blind manufacturer in Europe. They have over 1,000 employees across 6 sites in the UK and Ireland. And, you know, they are typical of what we expect to see through a good digital transformation project. You know, they're returning 3 to 5 times on their investment in the first 12 months. The system is breaking even within months. And when, you know, whenever you run the calculations and you do the analysis and the process flow, it really is a no-brainer should you be able to find the right partner to help you implement a project such as this. And we've literally halved their induction time. And this is something we see across the board. So new staff that come into the business, let's say operators, etc., we halve the induction time. The operators they're ready to go out to the floor almost the same day, you know, to meet their departments. You know, there's no administration and paperwork to sign things, to sign-in sheets, to score inductions and assessments. It's all done automatically. And really, you know, what we're saying here is the impact of having that full visibility. And we've even had incidents, you know, recently where, you know, to be able to sit with employees that you're, you know, you're managing, your line managers, etc., and have all that information to hand in front of you on the screen while you're talking to them is really powerful. And one of the key things about the projects that we would work with and what we would suggest for digital transformation is to have systems that are customizable. You know, don't make it a bespoke project whereby you're, you know, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg with some, you know, big solution. Have a system that's customizable that can grow with your needs and your business needs. And that's what a system like Obbi does and offers. You know, we have open APIs that allows you to integrate. So you can see somebody like Decora, for example, we've integrated with their HR and their time and attendance system. You know, so the information is, you know, the user information isn't double keyed. It's automatically taken from the source to prevent you having to input, let's say, new starts and people whose details change or leavers, for example. And then we also have the time and attendance system. So let's say, for example, we have Decora here and somebody doesn't turn in for their shift as can commonly happen. We can look and see on Obbi, you know, who has a particular skill that's in the business and has logged in this morning. You know, so who has checked in through the TNA system? We can check that through Obbi so that the shift manager can say, look, I'm down a sawman here, I'm down an operator. I know there's one, you perhaps have a spare one in this department. Can you please send them up here? You know, and having that type of information is invaluable. You know, another thing that we found is when you have, for businesses, you know, let's say that they have over 100 staff, knowing the skill level of each employee so that you can tangibly set the forecast and production forecast is vital to ensure you're running an efficient operation. And as John had said initially, creating the cash and shipping like you should be. You know, so if you have, you know, you know, on your tablet, on your laptop, on your phone, whatever device you want to use, you can go in and you can check and say, for example, you're coming up to John Smith in the line and you're a new shift supervisor. You're not sure what level John Smith is at. You have to take his word for it. But whereas in Obbi, you can see exactly what he's trained to. He's like a level 5 operator here. He should be doing so many units a day, and then you can forecast accordingly. You know, so just that flow of information really helps the efficiency and take a lot of that pain out. And that's what a good digital transformation project looks like. So what about Obbi specifically? Well, we have two platforms in Obbi. We have Obbi, which is an enterprise level solution. And then we introduced about a month ago a solution called Obbi Lite that's specifically for getting staff back to work safely after COVID. And you can use that system for free for a period of time, and you can try it. And if you'd like to do that, our contact details are on the end of the page. And as we say, because we're approaching things differently, you know, there's a different mindset. It's like Rich and it's like John had said, there's an openness and a partnership type solution as opposed to a supplier customer type relationship. We're here to partner, we're here to advise, we're here to consult, and we're here to deliver exactly what you want and you need. And because of that, for example, last year we were nominated as Enterprise Software Company of the Year. in the BT IT Awards. We're nominated as Best Digital Business of the Year, Best Use of Cloud, and that's as a result of the work that we're doing with our customers. You know, we're only as good as the last job that we do. Unfortunately, every job that we've done since we launched, you know, 3 years ago, has been good. And to be able to do things like take your customers to, you know, the award ceremonies with you is the real, you know, reflection of success for me in a digital transformation project. So if we look at digital transformation generally, you know, what like we've boiled it down here to 3 very simple and straightforward steps, and the other presentations have alluded to this too. You know, your IT systems need to be aligned with your business needs. You know, so you need to understand the needs of the business, the pain points, the latent needs, and that's something that we can help you with. You know, we have helped all of our customers with. Step 2 is then creating a vision and a process map and doing the analysis so that we can determine who needs to be engaged with at all levels throughout the businesses and what their responsibilities are from a process and procedure perspective. And then the last thing is create your transformation plan. You know, so a lot of the time that'll define what the functional areas of the business are. You know, so if you say, for example, in this scenario, you have something like Flowlens managing your CRM and your MRP. You have something like ShopFloorLive managing your production, and then you have something like Obbi managing your document control, your training, your checks on machines, you know, your maintenance, all that type of good stuff. And then you have something like, let's say, Xero or Sage looking after your accounts, and it's plotting out that, you know, that map. And then what's your transformation plan to implement? Now, what does a successful project look like? The success factors that would be involved. And it's really to find the right partner with the right solution. Like when we go up, and I'm sure it's the same with Rich and with John, you know, the projects we're going up against the SAPs, we're going up against the Oracles, we're going up against, you know, the biggest of companies and the smallest of companies, and we're winning businesses and delivering, you know, what they can't. So it's really, really important to get the right partner with the right solution. And the second thing, probably equally as important, is user involvement and engagement. You know, so our key aim and your key aim should be to drive adoption throughout the business. And it should be driven in a non-coercive way so people don't feel like they have something pushed down on them. And that's what we do as part of the transformation plan, is look at key stakeholders, key influencers in the business who can drive that adoption. And because the system, or a system like Obbi, is so simple to use, that becomes very straightforward. The third thing, and it's been mentioned, you know, countless times here, is leadership buy-in and support. So from a top down in the organization, it needs to be driven from the top down. It needs to be a cultural shift. It needs to align with the culture of the business, a culture of continuous improvement. Unfortunately, engineering and manufacturing companies, that's in our DNA, you know, so it's another no-brainer. A clear statement of requirements is the fourth thing. The fifth is proper planning and touch points to manage the project throughout, to have realistic expectations. And again, a good partner will help you define those and will sanity check those expectations with you and help you come up or co-create expectations that meet your needs. And then a really critical one at the end is smaller project milestones, okay? Is like not keeping it as like a big blast style project, but chunking it down into small project milestones so that will allow you, again, to drive adoption through setting up wins at all levels throughout the business, okay? So that means every person that uses whatever the system or systems are should feel the positive impact of them, which will drive adoption, which will ensure that you have a successful digital transformation project. And that's it in a nutshell, folks, from me. And thanks very much for listening. Again, thanks to Stephen, and thanks to Rich and John. And if you would like to learn more about Obbi, my contact details are there and the slides will be circulated too. So thanks very much, Stephen. Thank you.
Thanks, JP. If Rich and John could also switch your cameras on, we'll do a couple of minutes of quick Q&A. Whilst they're doing that, I really like that reminder, JP, that small is both safe and ultimately more successful as well. There's been too many people burnt with too many big projects, just trying to completely transform their business all in one go. And that kind of feeds in very strongly to what John was saying earlier. A couple of questions for you all. How long does implementation typically take? And what's the likely return on investment that you would expect to see, whether it's the products that you're involved with or any other transformation project? John, maybe start with you.
Well, it really depends, Stephen, of what, when we say length of time, I'll keep this very short, but one has to define where is the problem, if it's shop floor, if it's a sales order. Look at that. We're seeing in some cases 2 to 3 months, we have major transformations underway. The nice thing about the systems we're talking about today, it takes days, maybe a week, maximum maybe 2 weeks to get up and running. And that's only to feed in the data, because what we tend to have is a very good platform with very minimal customization required for particular businesses. So you start to see impact, and certainly return on investment can be weeks, maybe months, 2 months max, not years as a typical return on investment.
And Rich, in terms of your own product, I know certainly visiting one company last year, the life had been beat out of them trying to introduce a big ERP system that they'd taken off the shelf. And they nearly lost the entire business whilst they tried to concentrate to make that work. So from your experience in working with intimately with manufacturing firms, what are people beginning to see in terms of return on investment and timelines?
It's similar to John. I mean, some of the figures I quoted there with our friends at Industrial Switchgear, they took a longer time to get to that 18 months to be fully rolled out, but they were saving 25 grand a year on that admin almost from the first 6 months. And that, you know, that's an ongoing saving, and it's a fraction, you know, what they're spending on Flowlens is a fraction compared to that. GWE did it a lot quicker, fully deployed in 3 months. And, you know, some things are hard to put a number on, like two days of the MD's time isn't just what you pay him for 2 days. In Wayne's case, you know, it's that output that he's able to generate and has generated in terms of the doubling of turnover. So it's, I think, whereas a product like ours can cost anywhere from, you know, typically 200 to 500 quid a month, plus a few grand of that expert kind of implementation piece. The you know, the payback is quick, but it's what it unlocks is really where people, it's why this is digital transformation. You know, it's not just, you know, IT, it's about how do you transform your business and how do you get the time and the system in place so you have the freedom to do that.
And JP, I'll come to you very quickly on that one, and I'll take one more question to wrap everything up.
Yeah, well, like personally speaking, and hopefully John and Rich will support me on this, is that the payoff's almost instant, and the having your hurdle rate instantly is directly related to identifying the key problem you're trying to solve. You know, so if you take our project with Decora or with Cray Concrete or with Lagan or with and any of those, you know, scale of projects, you know, from the smaller 50-person organization to the thousands of people, it's always been, the common point has been, what is the key issue here we're trying to solve? And let's prioritize the milestones. And so we knew, for instance, with Decora, that the main thing that their main issue was like around induction, for example, in the beginning. They were inducting like 30 staff a week, let's say, something in that. You know, so if we could make a real dent in that, then we could do it, and we could show them, you know, massive savings. You know, so it's literally months. And then if you have something like, I know Rich, you know, has a freemium or trial tier, and we have the same with our COVID. You know, so like if you're using something like Obbi Light free to do your pre-use screening checks for COVID for staff coming into the business, you know, the intangibles, again, as Rich said, around protecting you from claims, etc., you know, or making sure your staff aren't getting ill, you know, can't really be quantified, you know. But, you know, if the system's costing you very little, the return is very quick.
There's some other questions that have come in, and we'll answer those directly to people, and we'll also share the answers after when we share the recording and stuff. John, there's one specifically here about, will adjusting the schedule, for example, with a new product order, will the visual schedule show me what the impact on the existing production schedule will be? Should I choose to run it? It will also show optimization in the schedule. I think it was something specific about what you were talking about earlier.
I think on that one, Stephen, we won't have enough time to answer it, but let me put a very simple point back on that. The system can do it, provided it's got the right information on the length of time it takes to run individual products. And it's something we do a lot of discussion with companies. If they have good information, as it's going to take me 2 minutes to run this or 10 minutes, yes, the system can do it. It's that data suddenly becomes cumulative, and the system gets blamed to say it's going to be 2 weeks out against the schedule. So all I would ask is look at what you're asking in terms of, have you got the data? The system can do it.
Okay, we're going to finish up there. We have some other questions which, with the permission of the panelists, we'll get those answered for everyone as well. Can I thank Rich, John and JP for joining us this morning. I certainly learned a lot. There's a lot of wisdom in there that I think that, particularly in a COVID time where we're beginning to really understand what the size of the market is, what the demand is out there, it's going to have quite a profound impact on our colleagues and our businesses. And if we continue to rely on those processes in people's heads that Rich talked about earlier, we could find ourselves in a very unsafe place in terms of our businesses. Thanks everyone for joining us. We will share the answers in the recordings and the blogs and other bits of information which will hopefully be useful to you. Stay safe, and we'll see you at our next presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.